Well, hey, let me start the video. What up and welcome back for another Malazan collaboration. I'm excited to have the High Fist back, and he is the one who actually suggested this topic because we're going to be diving into something that I've wanted to do for a long time. For Valentine's Day, I guess we should say Happy Valentine's Day. We're going to
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the best couples. Welcome back, High Fist.
Thank you for having me. It's always be here.
Well, I'm excited. And actually, this is something that we have had not planned as a collaboration video, but we've had that channel talking about like best duos, best relationships. And we've talked a million times about how it's one of the best parts of the series. So we have a big list of cool couples to go through. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the comments, because, you know, people are going to like bring up ones that we don't even remember right now. But before we even get in there, let's just talk about the romance, right? Because I have heard people like love the romances and the way that he handles relationships and stuff, and then I've heard people bag on it. So what do you think about just like that aspect of the books in general?
I think there's something to that criticism, because I think Counselor had this one of her first videos where she pointed out one of the sort of the most jarring things that we notice about some of these romances, which is that people just have a fling and suddenly it's about, you're the love of my life. Oh my God, a poor Ganos Paran. What are you going to do, lad? My soul burns for poor Ganos Paran, blah, blah, blah. When the reality is him and Tattoosail just had a fling, right? And Tattoosail being one of the many souls in Silver Fox, was it really going to be that jarring for sort of people who've lived for such a long time? For Whiskey Jack, such a veteran, to have so much to be like, oh wow, poor Paran, right? I think that element of exaggeration does exist, but some of the humorous ones always work. I'm not. I know there are many people out there who are big fans of the heavier romances, Collat and Whiskey Jack, Cutter and Apsala,
the really
and all that. But my favorite ones are the light-hearted ones, right?
Me too.
The Tehol and Janat, Pearl and Lostara Yil.
Forgot about that.
What else can we think of? Even Kalam and Minala towards the end, they have this really sort of quirky banter sort of thing. Going on. That's always a lot more enjoyable as far as I'm concerned. I've always liked Kasa and Samardev, which is another something I did an entire video on. It's the fun stuff that I'm a big fan of, whereas the heavier ones where it's all about the love of my life and the pain and the anguish and all that angsty stuff, that's not really my cup of tea, but I can see why people enjoy them.
Totally. Well, that's not your bent normally anyways for any of the stuff, right? You're like not in it for all the gushy whatever is anyway. But I'm with you. I think like even like picker and blend, like the banter aspects, Iskar and Magora. So like I'm into it. I kind of let the contrived aspect of some of the relationships slide, just because I think he can get away with the kind of forged in the crucible of some intense whatevers and that argument. So you know, I'm here for it. I always am gonna like be a supporter. I really enjoy the relationships, and there's some that are legit. I loved your video on Karsa and Samar Dev. Like you know, there's a lot of lighthearted moments, and she like, I love how she always is bagging on him, and she's just
hemorrhoid cream.
Yes, the hemorrhoid cream, exactly. But I also like it because there is like still even there a deep element to the relationship and how they like come at it as equals, and like you know, I even like that, like about the lighthearted parts, like the orgy scenes from, I forget what book that is. Is it like Reaper's Gale, or no, it must be Toll the Hounds, I think, where they all Scalara and Barathol and Picker and Blend and all that.
Toll the Hounds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, when they come back to Darujistan and whatnot. But you know, even there, like that's like awesome and hilarious and just like a badass scene that I love. But that's deep too, because it's like, dude, they're all just like grown-ups making grown-up choices, and they're like, let's get it. And it's just like, I don't know. I like that about it. It's like everything I like about the books, that people approach it like grown-ups for the most part.
And despite the orgy and all that, Barathol and Solara still get a pretty nice, warm, touching, sort of credible, narratively credible end together. It didn't feel contrived.
Yeah.
It was quite natural. The way she sort of saw the softer side in him, and the way that he kind of was drawn to her, that seemed very nice. It wasn't one of those my heart beats for her or whatever, right? It wasn't any of that. It was just natural. We see monologues here and there of Silara sort of way back in the Bonehunters, even of her kind of seeing that there's a
you were
never
saying
before seen perspective for Ruthan Bat fans.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting the inside sneak peek. So this is awesome. We're
Cribs, Malazan Cribs. What's that show called? MTV Cribs or whatever.
Are you going to do this for every relationship? You're going to go into a different room and we're going to see all the different aspects of your house or something, all your dirty laundry and everything.
Yeah, I wish there's just too much dirty underwear around. I wish I could give you a house tour, but you know.
So we're back, and you were talking before I cut you off about Scalara. You were saying something about even when you go back to the Bonehunters or something like that.
Yeah, because even when you go back to the Bonehunters, you can see that Silara starts seeing a softer side of Barathol.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it's done in a really subtle way. It's not done in a way which sort of makes it inevitable. It's not done in a way which makes it predictable.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting observation that she makes because she sees that he has a softer side, and that slowly, book by book, becomes something more meaningful. By the time we get to the very end of Told the Hounds, it's so believable that the two of them end up together.
Yeah, totally. And that's like kind of what I like about it too, is like that's how you want a relationship to be, right? Like you kind of, that's like the type of relationship you aspire to have, is like where someone kind of sees the stuff in you that you want to be seen or whatever, you know what I mean? And kind of like appreciates the stuff that you kind of are like, hey, this is the stuff that I'm like proud of or whatever. And somebody to like actually kind of see that, because Barathol especially, right? He's just like this huge ass kicker guy who, like, you know what I mean?
Who's known to be a mass murderer who opened the gates at Arryn and who betrayed the sort of the entire kingdom. Because the first time Lorik meets him, there's a scene where Lorik is tempted to kill him because many of them believe that Barathol's the one who opened the gates of Arryn or whatever.
Totally.
And Barathol's like, you idiots, the Aimas don't need the gates to be open. Right? Why would the Tilan Aimas need the gates to? I was running. I did open the gates, but I was on my way out.
Yeah,
is what he says.
That's hilarious.
And he's an introspective character like Kalam, but at the same time, Erikson kind of differentiates them in this way where you can tell they're cousins or brothers or whatever it is, but at the same time, you can see that they belong to the same tribe. Erikson has always, whether this is with the Trells or the T-Standi or the Jagut or whatever it is, this idea of variation inside variation is always fascinating.
Totally. I love that stuff. And she likes it too. You know, I was actually hoping someone would do a Scalara video for one of the, because she's an interesting character.
Erikson doesn't talk about her more.
Yeah, because she has a really interesting evolution, and she's kind of like where she starts and where she ends and how you feel it, you know what I mean? That's not like the stereotypical strong female character or whatever. So she's a badass. Actually, those guys don't listen to this podcast.
Child and all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's I think Niflrog even talked about that in his Stani video, maybe, or his Harlow, and I don't remember, but there is definitely core.
Was it the Told the Hounds video?
Yeah, I think it is Told the Hounds, like how Harlow's a mirror for Namander or something like that.
Man, that guy just spots things that I never would.
Yeah, I know. I don't even aspire to do those kind of videos. I just totally leave that to you guys because, but no, she's such a strong and interesting character. Oh, and I guess I should say, obviously, I'll just put it in the title, but this is spoilers for everything. Obviously, I think we've already spoiled everything.
I'm here, guys. Anamander Rake dies.
Yeah,
and the Crippled God is the damsel in distress.
So we got that.
Traveler is Darcy, guys.
Those guys don't listen to this podcast. Had some really good like Barathol, Scalara, orgy stuff in their Told the Hounds podcast too, which was really good. Well,
of course they did.
Yeah, and he was going off. I forgot. I wish I knew the two guys' names, because the one guy's like the expert, right? And he like was just going off, and it was awesome. What about, because you already brought these ones up, and you said like the Perrin Tattersail thing, like, do you buy that forged in the Crucible thing, or you think it was kind of contrived? Because they do go through that. Like at first it was like she was it was more like this kind of geopolitics, hiding him from the people who wanted to get him, kind of a thing, and then they just kind of ended up boning because they were both vulnerable or whatever. It is kind of,
so I did see that they had a bond,
yeah.
But I also thought that the bond, the depth of the bond was overemphasized a lot by third parties.
Yes,
in
there you
Memories
go.
of Ice.
Yeah,
Third
how would they
parties
know?
made the bond, exactly, and they made the bond between them seem like it was a lot more spectacular than
for
it
the
should
ages.
have to them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because like, I mean, as far as everybody else knew, right? Like literally, like maybe, I don't know, what was this in terms of like days from the Battle of Pale, but it was only like 3 or 4 days. I think she was like boning Khaled the day before he, the day of the.
Yeah, just what a way to go, huh? Just before the fight.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then the weird part is like in the whole Silver Fox thing, like you feel for Ganos there, because it's like, if you buy the whole thing, but it would be weird to just like have all those pedophile feelings, right? Or have that conflict of being like, wow, this was like my girlfriend, but then this is like this 10-year-old kid.
Yeah, it certainly would be weird, and it would be uncomfortable, but it's but certainly sort of not to the extent that they make it look. I do feel a certain level of sympathy for Paran for having to go through that, right? But it wasn't. They didn't make it look uncomfortable though. People like Whiskey Jack and Quick Ben were making it look like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah, totally. And that's like, well, and I guess maybe that takes me to the next one, and we can just get these ones out of the way, but which is the Corlat Whiskey Jack, because there's kind of that same thing going on there. Like, I think she, thought he was hot or whatever, and obviously was just like thirsting over him physically, when she first saw him or whatever. And then he had, she kind of has this like admiration for him, I guess, for just being this like line in the sand kind of moral compass guy. But that seems to be even more hot and heavy right off the bat than Tattersail.
She likes them young. Collab likes them young.
Right? Yeah, exactly. The cougar.
He's a cool 150 is Whiskey Jack.
Yeah.
Right. So
just a baby.
And yeah, just a baby. The entire dynamic between Whiskey Jack and the T Standy, once again, to be honest, I don't mean to be a T Standy hater. I am not a T Standy hater, right? But the romance between Whiskey Jack and Corlat, the friendship between Whiskey Jack and Anomander Rake.
Yeah.
They are both sort of, I liked every scene with them, right? It's not like I disliked any of the Corlat Whiskey Jack scenes.
Yeah.
It's not that I dislike any of the Whiskey Jack Rake scenes, but do they really have the gravitas and the pathos, or whatever the term is that you use for these things, right?
Yeah.
Do they because everybody in that world treats these relationships as having this gravity, this weight.
Yes.
That I just didn't see. And because the thing is, we do see it in many other dynamics. So it's not like I've read the books and I go, oh wow, this writer sucks. Right? We do see the depth of certain friendships and whatever it is in the series.
Yeah, totally.
But I just don't see it with this. There is one really good Corlat and Whiskey Jack scene where they travel through the T Standy warren to get from one place to another. And it's just the two of them, and they have this conversation. And all of a sudden, Whiskey Jack kind of lies to her that he's not really split with Lessine, right?
Right.
Dujek Wanam and Whiskey Jack have not really split from the Empire. They still work for Lessine. But the official sort of story given to the T Standy and Kaladin Brood is that they've split from the Empire.
Right.
So when it's just the two of them together, he kind of mentions that him and Lessine are not on the same page, and her face kind of darkens, and he knows that he fucked up because she knows he's lying.
You're right.
And it kind of ruins that small moment that they had together. That was a good scene.
Yeah, that was good, right? Because it's like that, and that's like actually the, one of the few times or whatever that you see him even betraying, and I think that why it's so good is because he kind of like betrays his own like moral compass, right? And he's like torn between obviously his like twin set. Well, I guess maybe he just hasn't been in the position where he had these conflict, where his like responsibilities and where his heart was like torn in multiple places, or he had to like choose between one or the other. But that was like interesting because he kind of, he's supposed to be this big noble guy, and he throws it under the bus, even in the face of like his chick. And I think it's more like a one-sided kind of thing. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it does show that it maybe is more one-sided, right? Because she's all in. She's like, dude, it's been like 20,000 years or how many ever. She's like, I'm going for it. And then you're out here lying kind of thing. And just like, even from the front end, right? She was like basically very direct in what she was interested in. So
he was not exactly a reluctant passenger, Ishkar. Let's face it.
Yeah,
he might be your namesake, but he was not exactly a hard sell at this point. He was ready.
He was like more surprised. He was like, I think he even had like some moments when he rolled up and he was like, dang, who's this chick? But he's like, you're like an old man. You shouldn't be thinking about that, not realizing, or I guess not connecting the dots that she's like way older than him.
Yeah, that she's about what 10 times as old as him, maybe more.
More probably, yeah, exactly. Yeah. What about
that him and Collab was actually worse than Paran and Silver Fox? That's the age difference between the two.
Oh yeah, totally. No, exactly. She was definitely robbing the cradle. There's no doubt about it. In almost an egregiously disgusting way, kind of, if you think about like percentages or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a toddler. I mean,
yeah,
Whiskey Jack's a toddler.
You're talking about like 0.00 something like percent of his age or something. So, yeah, I'm here for it though. I love it. It sets up some good drama when she's all hurt at the end when he goes. So Apsalar and Cutter though, I think is more, more. Well, I guess it takes a longer time to develop and is more rich and interesting. Maybe. What do you think of that one? I'm not like a huge, I've never been a Cutter Crocus fan anyway. But that is a much bigger storyline.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I do like their individual storylines when they're split up. Apsalar does a lot of interesting stuff once she's away from him, and he does a lot of interesting stuff once he's away from her.
Him with Scalara.
Which was actually a nice dynamic. Which was actually, and she travels all the way to Darujistan because she likes Cutter. Yeah. That's why Scalara travels with them. She wants to leave the child behind, Korbal Doom's child. I wonder if that will show up in the Witness trilogy, right? Who knows? But and then sort of she kind of falls for Barathol along the way.
Yep. Yeah. No. Exactly. Yeah. And he is. That's the part I don't like about the Cutter Apsalar thing, is that it kind of almost is like takes away some of his like development in a way, just because it's like he starts kind of as this like angsty teenage, terrible communicator, doesn't even understand his own feelings, let alone be able to communicate them out to anyone else. And he's like doing that all with Chalice. And then that kind of translates over to his like obsession with Apsalar, and he just, it's like he's developing in all these other ways and becoming all philosophical in his interactions with Dancer and stuff. And like, but that's like the one area where it seems like he struggled to grow up a little bit. Until, I guess that's what the whole catharsis of the very end is, but I don't know. What do you think?
I was just going to say, I guess the standard rationale for that would be that he's come a full circle, that they've both come a full circle, and they meet back at the is it the Itko Khan fishing village?
The Itko Khan, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where they meet again. So I suppose the theme there is that they've come back a full circle. I must say her journey was a lot more enjoyable than his.
Yes.
Her shenanigans were a lot more. The whole Cutter, Hiboric, Scalara just endlessly walking on and on was not I wasn't a very big fan of that.
Yeah.
But the Apsalar stuff was just she's always doing she messes with the Hounds of Darkness. She's with Shadow Throne and Cotillion. She's got the little dragon dolls with her, Telorist and Curdle.
Yeah, Curdle.
Right. I think she runs into Urko Crust, which is where she picks up the 2 stuffed dolls. So she's always doing something interesting. Following Apsala around is always interesting. Totally. Cutter kind of gets lost in the mix sometimes while she stands out.
Yeah, she really grows into that power and becomes a kind of fully fledged badass in her own right, and just like a really cool, interesting character. I love her.
Yeah, I must say I like the end though. I mean, as much as I sort of take pride in being cynical and unsentimental and all that, that ending scene with the 2 of them together, that did get a clap out of me. Yeah,
definitely. And you wanted it to work. That was the thing. You just wanted Crocus to do that sooner. You were always like, man, come on, brother. Like, just say what you mean what you say, do all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for someone to put up a video defending Crocus / Cutter or whatever.
Yeah,
because I feel like everybody trashes him. I trash him. Yeah, I trash him as well. So
I definitely have bagged on him.
Yeah. But it would be interesting to see someone doing a video that sort of defends Cutter and sort of goes into why he's perhaps a more interesting character than we give him credit for.
Yeah, no, and I think he annoys me. I think it could very well be done. I'm sure there's some Crocus fans out there, because like I think one of the reasons why he bugs me too is like he reminds me of a young me who can't get your act together, don't know how to communicate and stuff, and it's like you see all those same pitfalls and you're like, you idiot, just like just open your eyes kind of thing. And so I think that there's an argument to be made that that's why he annoys people, and that's what makes him a good character, is that he's like realistic for being, this kind of bumbling, social interactor.
So Crocus has hope then. He does have hope. Yeah, someday he might make it once he sort of lives up to his potential, Ishkar, and becomes like you. So that makes me feel better. So Crocus and Apsala do have hope.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he might even like develop the physical attributes over time too, which will be.
I mean, come on, he can't be that greedy, Ishkar. Come on.
That'll be the cherry on top. So
nobody's that. Nobody gets that much.
There's people who can like win the lottery twice and stuff. It's happened. I'm just saying.
Oh, but we already have that with you. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well. What about Karsa? Because that guy also has some self-confidence, shall we say? And I think even though Samar bags on it, I think she likes it, and I think you said it in the Civilization video or whatever too. Like she's always in awe of him. Like, oh my god, and like he's like subverting her own expectations. Like, yeah, we're going into this thing, and all these dudes are gonna mess us up, and he just doesn't like agree to the social compact. And so it's like he's just operating on a totally different set of like calculations. And she's always like, and she likes that. She's like, you barbarian, but she's like, damn, this dude is something like,
Yeah. So in anime, Ishkar, I'm not too sure if you're an anime fan or anything like, right? So there's this term called Sundere, right? Tsundere, right? So people anime fans listening to this would laugh because it's more of a sort of absurd, perhaps adult anime term, but it's essentially the stereotype of a girl who sort of is gruff and prickly to you on the outside, but she likes you on the inside. So the example that I always like to quote from modern literature that a lot of people know immediately is Hermione Granger. Right, the sort of Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley sort of. I don't know if you've read the Harry Potter books or whatever, but it's that whole sort of, she's like, oh, you idiot, blah blah blah, why can't you do this, blah blah, but
punching him on the arm.
Exactly. But she has like, so Samardev does that a lot with Karsa.
Yeah,
and it is so much fun because I'm pretty sure Erickson is not an anime fan. He doesn't know what a Sundere is, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure he has other tropes and characters and influences in his mind when he writes these things.
Yeah.
And just to see that transfer to this, and Samardev is one of the best, what anime fans, weebs would call Sundere girls, right? Samardev is the stereotype of what we would call a Sundere girl. And to pair her up with what I guess, once again, maybe I kind of sort of make myself a little cringe with this, but what we would call a Chad, which is Casa Along.
Yes.
That is it's both a match made in heaven and a match made in hell. And Eriksen's the perfect writer for that.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that I can speak about that all day, as you know.
I love it. I love the idea of Karsa as a Chad. I'm gonna have to try and make that like the thumbnail or something like that. I gotta find some like good.
In some ways, he's the ultimate Chad.
That you should make that video. Karsa is the ultimate Chad. That would be great.
I'm pretty sure that there have been people who've noted that there might even be someone on our Discord channel who's made this kind of comparison as well. I can't be the only one because he's just the Chaddest character in the entire series.
I love it. Yeah, he never skips leg day, that's for sure. But she wouldn't have been down for him, I think, at the beginning. You know, it took that evolution and stuff too, you know what I mean, that he goes through to really, because like it's not till the very end where she's like, all right, let's do this, you big idiot, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And it took her a while to totally get there. And then I think even longer after that to come around to go, all right, you know.
And even then it happened that quickly because she was that smart. Right. Because someone who was not as smart as her would not have been able to unpeel the layers behind Casa for this, right? I mean, and this is where Eriksen, once again, I mean, sort of, it's kind of a cliche at this point for us to keep saying Eriksen's great at this and Eriksen's great at that.
Yeah.
But Eriksen is great at that. He is where he knows which character needs to perform a certain role to make a different character look a certain way in our eyes.
Yeah.
And Samardev makes us look at Casa precisely how Eriksen wants us to look at Casa, which is a very different Casa from the House of Chains rapist that we meet at the very beginning. And a character like Samardev is so central for that humanization process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You need that lens over it because like, and even there, it doesn't even totally work. Like, which I think, you know, it's kind of the opposite of Tavor in a way. Like Tavor never is able to get past that, you know, stuff with Felison. Like people never forgive her for that, you know, even by the end and seeing like, oh my God, this is like a plan gone bad. And like, look at what a pure motive she had and all that stuff. And but Karsa, it's like people just forget and they're like ride or die Karsa legit. Like for me, I struggled to just personally, I was never like a ride or die. Same thing with Calor. I'm like, don't try and humanize Calor on me. You know what I mean? And so I needed that personally. Otherwise, I never would have got there on Karsa. I would have appreciated him as a character. You know what I mean? But I would have always been like, yeah, but dude, wasn't this the guy who was like going around crushing skulls and raping chicks the whole time?
Yeah. I guess that's one of the big differences between you and I when we look at the series as well. And that's kind of one of the contrasts based on which you and I have had many conversations, even in the Discord server, where I sort of, I am always willing to accept that I can appreciate characters who have done pretty immoral things in the story. I've always kind of been able to do that, while you've always had a more personal stake in sort of, I mean, would you agree? You've always had a much more of a sort of emotional sort of approach to whether you have a good sense of a good vibe from that character or not.
Yeah, totally. No, like with my kids, we do all this stuff like with their social interactions. It's called Q-tip. It's like quit taking it personal. I definitely like do not heed my own advice. I take everything personal. I'm like, Calor, you fed those people to themselves. You made them eat themselves. So like, bro, you're dead to me. You know what I mean? There's no amount of like, and not even like, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and like Lore Guru is like throwing out all that stuff about how he wouldn't have been a bad, you know, he might not have been a bad guy prior to the, you know, the fall of the Chain God or whatever. And I'm like,
and he was the one who brainwashed me into it.
I know.
Because the conversation, the Discord conversation started from the video that you and Raf made.
Well,
great
from your
collab,
video,
by the way, right?
Yeah,
from my video, right? But we've all been looking forward, obviously, to see a collab between someone and Raf, right? So
and that was dope.
right. So, yeah. So as soon as you guys said that, I was like, hey, wait a second. I did mention that in one of my videos, and that was because Low Guru had convinced me that Kalo was a good guy, and there are some guys like Niffle Rock, Low Guru, when they tell you something about the law, you kind of just take it for granted that that's how it is.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and I think his response was that in Forge of Darkness and in Fall of Light there are quotes which suggest that, right?
Totally. And he said stuff about Blood and Bone, how there's like those ghost scenes and the ice stuff where those people were like, paying tribute and saying what like a benevolent dude he was, you know what I mean? And like feasting in his honor and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, no, I would love to see that as a video or an essay or something like that. What are some of these other? We talked about Barathol and Scalara. That was a really good one. I want to talk about Stani because I added to your list too because you sent me a couple of names, which was I think Gruntle and Stani, and also actually I think it was Gruntle and Stani because they never got together, but that she was in the middle of a lot of stuff because like she Gruntle never said anything, as you say, but then Buke was the one that she actually wanted and was thirsting after because he had this kind of like hurt, lost his family, noble, whatever, that, and he was a little bit older and she was into that. But then Harlow, the original Harlow, wanted her too, so which is kind of funny. They're both like caravan guards and they're kind of like secretly, or I guess one not so secretly, like thirsting, and then she like kind of hooks up with that street boss chick and is like in Memories of Ice when they're in I forget what city, and she totally hooks up in front of everyone. So she's just in the middle of like, oh, and Marulio, right? Because he ultimately wants her towards the end too, right?
By the end of Toll the Hounds, that cost him his life, doesn't it? I mean, he kind of does it for her.
Totally. So what I mean, Stani, I guess, is like kind of big in the relationship conversation. Any favorites?
So Stani and Gruntle, I suppose, is the most tragic one. Or maybe Stani and Harlow, because she named the kid Harlow, and even though she sort of hates the kid, she still named him Harlow because it still reminds her of Harlow or whatever. But Gruntle has one of the most I guess general fans would consider that to be one of the most disappointing ends, because Gruntle was one of the major quote-unquote action heroes of the series. He was one of the real fighters of the series, and he could channel the power of the tiger god or whatever. Who would have expected Gruntle to die? I mean, maybe we should have, right? Maybe when you think about it, we should have expected it, and we did expect anybody to die, right? But Gruntle doesn't really. The only real powerful moment for me about Gruntle's death was that he was thinking about Stani as he dies.
Yes. No, totally. And I think that's like what makes Gruntle such a cool character in general, right? Is like, well, I didn't really see that, you know what I mean? He's like, even telling like Harlow at the beginning, because I'm on Memories of Ice now, and he was telling him like, dude, you can't like, you're just either tell her or not or whatever, but like, she is who she is kind of a thing and stuff. But like what makes him so cool is like he is like a big softie, even though he's like this total can turn into a tiger ass kicker, like savior pretty much of the city in a lot of ways. And throughout the whole book, she joins the Trigal Trade Guild and goes and kicks ass and all these crazy warrens and demons and stuff.
And it's all because he feels a certain sense of guilt as well about what happened to Harlow and what happened to Stani.
Yep. And Buke, even like at the beginning with Buke, he could like, you get his internal monologue. So it's like he's this big old, like nobody wants to F with him, crazy badass, but like he's a big softy inside, like kind of, he doesn't show it the way that like Stormy is always like kind of crying and stuff or whatever, and like really being outwardly emotional, but internally he's like a very empathetic character and like, pretty big softy. And I think that's what makes him so dope.
Yeah, and ultimately that was his undoing, because his nature was not in sync with Treach's nature. Treach wanted Gruntle to be more of a ferocious warrior, while the human side of Gruntle never really went away, and that ultimately kind of put them at odds with each other.
Totally. I think he even wanted to just like be a stay-at-home dad or something ultimately deep down, right? Because I think at the beginning when he like is when Ericsson's overviewing all the characters, like one of the things he just mentions in passing is how like he had this sweetheart or whatever, and he like went off on a job and came back and she was like already married to somebody else, and he was all bummed because he was going to get married to her and stuff. So it's like that was a huge part of who he was. It just never got a chance to like take root.
Listen, it's the type of pain that a lot of us have had to endure, right? And I do remember Gruntle sort of wanting to just make some money and retire. He's not really a man with ambition. He's not really portrayed as someone who sort of wants to amass a certain level of power or wealth or whatever, which was what made him interesting, because he was one of those badasses, but he wasn't those ultimate killing machine badass type guys like Kasa or Anamander Rake or whatever. He was much more of a human badass, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he didn't have like a big agenda, right? Like he just wanted to chill and drink beers, and then ultimately he's like, well, he's kind of like that movie Hero. I don't know if you've seen that with like Dustin Hoffman, where it's like he's the reluctant savior that he has to like ultimately like go into these plane crashes or like burning buildings and drag these people out, but he like doesn't want to, and he's like talking about the whole time. He's like, dude, these idiots. He's like, their building's on fire. He's like, nobody's gonna go in there, and then he's like, oh, I'll go in there and save these people then. And that's like kind of like Gruntle just wanted to chill and be, with his homies and drink beer and stuff. Poor guy.
Yeah, I really feel for him. Because when you think about it, there was absolutely, we talk about how unlucky Talk is.
Yeah.
But in terms of choices, in terms of just everything that Gruntle does is because he's just caught up in a wave.
Yeah.
He's just lost, and he wanders. He just wanders, and he's with Mapo, he's with the Bowl Brothers, he's with the Trigol Trade Guild, he's in Darujistan, he's he is just lost.
Totally.
And even for someone like me who usually does not feel a certain level of sympathy, I do feel that for him. And the last scene where he kind of thinks of Stony is certainly, I think, it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm disappointed with this resolution, but it still makes Gruntle a good character.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like the whole three-dimensional piece, and he never really gets back from that like initial blow when they get attacked, out with Bauchelain and Korbal Broach or whatever. And then Harlow dies and he's like an emotional basket case there for a little bit. And then he kind of like gets imbued with all this power and has this mission to do and all this stuff. So it kind of like fades to the background, but that stuff never goes away. Poor guy.
And he hates the fact that he got the power after Harlow died. If he had if Treach had chosen him just a little earlier, he could have saved his friend.
Ugh, I know. So bad. Exactly. What about Hellion? Because she's kind of at the middle of a bunch of love triangles too, and with Skull Death. But I actually like Hellion and Herb at the end, right? And like poor Herb watches her go through all this shit with all these dudes and just kind of stands on the sidelines forever. But like he that's kind of one of those ones too, like Skalara or something, where it's like, well, I don't know, maybe he liked her from day one. He was definitely like ride or die for her on the squad from day one. But he obviously saw, even with all of her shenanigans, and that's what I love about the characters and stuff anyway, she's like this crazy alcoholic and has all this like PTSD or whatever, and like, or mental trauma or whatever, but like that flowers into a good thing. But she's in the middle of all kinds of cool relationships.
I was just reading a couple of pages from the Bonehunters this morning because I was getting ready to respond to your tag, which I haven't yet, to pick a female character.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
And yeah, Helion is going to be my pick because Tavor's getting so much love these days, right? Tavor doesn't really need any support at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. Philip Chase made an excellent video on Lawn.
Yeah.
Right. You made one on Apt, and Counselor made one on Collat. So I was like, you know what? Everybody's kind of gone with their niche, right? Everybody's kind of gone with something that they have.
It's like in character. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about it in terms of humor, in terms of just excitement and joy and laughs, Hellion provides so much. And the reason I brought that
10
up
out of
is
10.
in response to your question of did Herb like her from the beginning?
Yeah.
I believe that I saw a couple of hints that
Mm.
he did like her from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because there are moments where he wants to say something to her, and she just says what, and they're just caught up in everything, the chaos around them, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh, never mind, it's nothing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so I do believe, and she is just, I will be taking some direct quotes from my video and things like that.
Yeah.
But she's so funny, and he is such a great sort of dry monosyllabic counterweight to that, because
Yes.
you need that quiet straight man along with the ball of energy.
Yep.
And
Totally.
yeah, that is probably for me, probably one of the most underrated pairings
Yeah.
in the entire series, Hellion and Herb. I think a lot of people give Hellion a lot of props. She's a very popular character,
Yeah.
but most people don't even know who Herb is,
Yeah.
because he's just really quiet and not a man of many words, so to speak. But
Totally.
that dynamic between them is really, really, especially when they're in Yucatan,
Yeah.
and everything's burning around them, even her hair's on fire, and all that, and even the way she just bosses everybody around,
Yep.
and Herb is just willing to go along with her for everything. He's
Totally.
there to protect her and to just go along with whatever crazy shit she suggests. And as she keeps going, she just picks up more followers. She's
Yep.
like, oh, let's go that way. And everybody's
Totally.
like, oh, why should we go that way? Because that's the only one that's not burning. She's drunk. Right?
Totally.
All of these people have a drunk guiding her, and she guides them eventually to the whatever, the promise, to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Totally. She's like actually a really competent person, right? And like that's what's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and he sees
And
that.
you know, and there's this. I might mention this in my video as well. There's this famous quote that's attributed to Napoleon.
Mm.
Some historians say that it's not really a Napoleon quote, but many people do point that out, and it always stuck with me when I was kind of reading about. So there was somebody who was sort of talking someone else up to Napoleon about how this guy was a great general and a great leader,
Mm-hmm.
right? How he's won victory after, he's a great tactical mind, he's a great strategic mind, and all that. And Napoleon was like, yes, but is he lucky? Right? And that is such a great phrase to capture Hellion,
Yes.
because whether it's the invasion of Lether in Reaper's Gale, or surviving the firestorm at Yucatan, or right until the very end in the Collab's battle in the Crippled God, Hellion is lucky. Even
Yes.
in Yucatan, none of her squad mates die. Right?
Totally.
She's drunk, and yet she guides all of them to safety. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get that video started.
And it's not like a god back thing either, right? It's not like Oppen was there like pulling strings or doing all this stuff. It's just like people don't like to admit stuff like that because then they think it takes away from the badass. It's like going back though to the Hel and Herb thing, that, well, not necessarily to them, but I think it tees up other cool relationships that kind of get to the remind me of the anime word again.
Sundere.
Yeah, because she kind of has that in a way, but not necessarily thirsting over him, but she definitely has that kind of like irreverent shit talking that he likes about her, and that like characterizes a couple of the relationships, one of which is, well, obviously we have Iskar Puss and Magora, which I think is a dope relationship. Like they are at each other's throats almost the entire time, but for whatever reason they also like love each other. Like that's how I am with my friends. So stuff like that resonated. We trash talk each other. I'm like, what's up, idiot? You know what I mean? Like that's how we kind of grew up, is to like, I'm not like, oh, you're such a great we rarely say like what we really think about the person. I'm like, what's up, dumbass? Or like, whatever, we just have that kind of style, and that's how they have. And then the other one is like Picker and Blend kind of also have, or they're kind of both that Sundere character towards each other, right? Like where they kind of are,
but they also have a very easy rapport with each other.
Yeah,
it's they're very rarely rude to each other in the sense of calling the other an idiot or whatever.
Yeah.
It's always kind of just banter. And I love it when they get together and they gossip about other people. There's this awesome scene in Memories of Ice where Anamander Rake lands from Moonspawn and they're with Lady Envy. And as Lady Envy walks towards Anamander Rake, Pick and Blend are just gossiping about Lady Envy.
Love it.
I could never, some ladies have all the class or whatever, because these the two of them are these grizzled soldiers. They're these fighters who are part of the Bridge Burners, and Lady Envy's like the paragon of feminine beauty and majesty and whatever, right? There's this, you just find it for anybody watching this, the Memories of Ice scene where Anamander Rake comes down from Moonspawn and he has his encounter with Lady Envy, which is a very enjoyable scene. My favorite Anamander Rake scene in the entire series is that scene. And Picker and Blend gossiping about Lady Envy is just the perfect comic touch to that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Anamander Rake and Lady Envy, we didn't have that on our list, did we?
Well, I was gonna ask you that, because where do you fall in that camp? Because I don't know. I still, and maybe you've already said this before, but where do you know? Because I don't think it's ever explicit. Like, there's confusion, I think, about like Namander and Fayed or whatever her name is, and whether they're brother and sister or kids, and whether she boned Anamander Rake, and that's like she's Namander's mom, right? Or if I thought there was a clip or whatever where she is Fayed's mom and she got with Namander to piss off Anamander Rake or something. But there's like a weird incestuous little thing there somewhere, I think. What
I mean, they're the T standee. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. It fits right in with the whole emo theme. So but that's kind of like a relationship for the ages. So that's like kind of an epic ex-boyfriend, girlfriend. They're kind of like the, I don't know, whatever, like some John Hughes couple, right? Where they're like the jock and the cheerleader. That's like that perfect couple.
And she's like, Draconis is trying to escape. And he says, I don't care. And she says, you might not, but he will be mad at me.
Yeah.
And Drake's like, why? And she says, because I helped you.
Yeah.
Right? I helped you beat him. And Rake says, you didn't help me beat him. You just stood there and watched while I beat him. Yeah. And she says, exactly. And what do you think his response would be? I just stood there and I watched. Exactly. They have a great, and in the end, he just walks away and she huffs and puffs and just runs after him as well.
Yeah.
Now that I think Lady Envy is just a brilliant character. I mean, nobody can take anything away from Lady Envy. Brilliant character.
Read those Kharkanas books, and their upbringing is a little gnarly.
So once again, and this is where the difference between you and I comes in, Ishkar. The fact that they sort of, that envy and spite do that, while to me, I mean, it is gruesome and it is horrifying.
Yeah. But
it still, to me, it doesn't take away from the depth and the sort of the interest level I have in that character.
Totally. No, I love him as character.
Do you know that I'm a twin?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, envy and spite.
You didn't start out as triplets, though.
I mean, but trust me, that is precisely what would have happened. That is exactly what would have happened.
Oh my gosh, gnarly.
Perhaps that's why I have a certain level of sympathy as well.
It's all kind of clicking into place for me right now. This whole perspective on the books and everything, like everything is now making very much sense, and more so.
I am the female Lady Envy, Ishkar, which is why I hate Anamander Rake as well.
Right now, it's just like a light bulb went on. It's like I understand everything now. It's like the Rubik's Cube. I got that final side done. But one of the other things which I didn't say about Hel and Herb, which I think it is kind of in the Barathol Scalara stuff too, and a lot of the picker and blend relationship, and even like the Iskar Pust and Magora, which I think just going to the broader question of how does he do character or relationships well and stuff like that. The thing I like about all those relationships, and the Karsa Sam Ardev one too, is like they're all going in like eyes wide open. They're not like projecting something onto this person that they want them to be, right? It's like, you know, they know like each other and they're accepting of that, and that is kind of like what makes for a really strong relationship. Like if you just know who that person is and you're not expecting them to be something different and whatever, and like I just think that's a really cool like grown-up aspect. Like she knows Karsa is who he is and she kind of accepts that. Picker and Blend know who they are. Like Barathol and Scalara, you know, he knows she's an ex whatever and had all this trauma, and she knows his warts and all that stuff, and like they, you know, can go into orgies and have like still security in their relationship and like a regular marriage and stuff, because it's like founded on real like a reciprocal respect for the actual being of that person instead of, which I think is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you pointed out, because it's so different from the way that I would classify Malazan romances and relationships, because as I was telling you, my distinction is lighthearted, serious.
Yeah.
Erikson does the lighthearted ones well, and he does the serious ones well, obviously.
Yeah.
But I am not as much a fan of the serious ones as I am of the lighthearted ones.
Totally.
Because I'm such a huge fan of the lighthearted ones. And that touches to your point as well. When Erikson depicts two people knowing each other, even the dynamic between the male and the female, or the female and the whatever it is, between the pair, that tends to be a lot more lighthearted.
Totally.
Whereas with the Apsala, Cutter, Whiskey Jack, Collab thing, when they just meet each other for the first time, where it has to progress, for the book to progress as well. Because with Samardev and Karsa all along, we get to see the two of them in real time. A lot. We get many, many, many pages and pages and pages of the two of them conversing with each other in real time. With Whiskey Jack and Collab, for example, I don't want to pick on that particular relationship, but just as a blueprint, just as an example, we do see scenes with them, but they are short, they are interspersed, and a lot of chronological events happen in between, because Memories of Ice spans a long period of time. Maybe it's also because of the metaphor of Silver Fox becoming a woman or whatever, but we just get the sense that this entire march and there's just so much happening, where we don't really get to see the two of them slowly warming up to each other the way we do with Karsa and Samardev.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think, you know, what's interesting there too, and you brought this up in the Whiskey Jack thing, is like the internal monologue more kind of like matches up to the out. There's no facades being maintained, right? Versus like if you look at the Whiskey Jack, the Cutter, you know, the Ganos and stuff, even with like Tattersail, they're like wondering how much to tell each other. They're thinking certain things, not saying them. You know what I mean? Versus like they're just much more. Like you said, they understand each other, and they're also like, don't give a shit if you know what I mean? They're who they are. And she like, you know, Samardev doesn't worry about how Karsa's going to interpret what she says, right? She just freaking says it.
Yeah. And neither is Erikson trying to make a serious point with that. Erikson tries to make many dark, brooding, serious, heavy, philosophical observations using the heavier romances. Whereas with so it also leaves us with a bit of a heavy sense when we read those romances, I guess. While with the light-hearted ones, it's always more of a breezy, romantic, cute, charming, funny, whatever it is. The best example I have of this dichotomy really being bitter for me is what Erikson did with probably, I mean, this guy, once again, another one of those characters whom people hate, but I absolutely love.
Who's that? Wait, I missed you. You skipped out for a second. Who?
Yeah, sorry. So I was just going to say, so one more person that I have in mind, right, whom a lot of people hate, but was one of my favorite characters. Can you guess whom that is? He's on the list that I gave you.
Oh God, here, let me look at the list. I have it right here.
This is an example why I like the light-hearted romances and why I'm not a big fan of the heavier ones.
So it must be Pearl and Lostara Yil then.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Pearl is one of my favorite. I think you knew that, right? You knew Pearl was one of my favorite.
Yes. I knew Pearl was a favorite.
That romance is probably my favorite romance in the entire series, because the banter between them is so good. and so just their travel through the Imperial Warren, the things that they go through together. Lostara Yil is another perfect Sundere girl,
Yeah.
right? In terms of the way, and just like how Casa is a Chad,
Yeah.
right? A Pearl would be, I guess, once again, to use cringe modern terminology, he would be, I guess, what we would call an edgelord or a troll or whatever, right? Pearl is one of the perfect kind of stereotypes of a trickster troll,
Yes. I love
right,
it.
in the series. So just like how Samardev has this sort of reversion towards Casa because he's a Chad,
Yeah.
Lostara Yil has a reversion towards Pearl because he's a troll.
Yep. Yeah. No.
Right, and then he kind of slowly breaks through it, and the dialogue between them is fantastic. The teasing between them is fantastic, and then for whatever reason, this amazing relationship that we see in Deadhouse Gates and House of Chains,
right,
that is just completely ripped out and destroyed in the Bonehunters, where
yeah,
Pearl just turns into an unrecognizable character.
right,
Right. Number one, he doesn't confirm whether Lostara Yil is dead. Right, he doesn't bother this love of the life that he's going crazy for, this competent, supposedly competent assassin, until that point, because even Lassine sees him as a worthy successor to Topper,
right,
which is not a short thing, right? Which is not
totally,
a small claim. And even though Kalam acknowledges, and he acknowledges that Kalam is a better assassin, a
right.
more skilled fighter,
He,
people tend to forget that Pearl did get the better of Kalam on two different occasions
yep,
because Pearl was smarter.
smarter, more strategic.
Exactly. People might not like Pearl, but Pearl is one smart dude. And he's cunning, he knows what to do, blah, blah, blah. But
Yep.
towards the end of the Bone Hunters, the sort of Pearl, in my opinion, just gets turned into a very one-dimensional sort of tragic. I mean,
He
when he
gets
dies, he's
obsessed,
even
and
like,
then
exactly. I mean, and their relationship was never like that. The banter between them in
yeah,
House of Chains and Deadhouse Gates, it was never meant, or at least never seemed to be meant. This the Pearl that we knew in Deadhouse Gates and House of Chains
it's
would
gone.
not have gone mad, would not have become a drug addicted lunatic,
Yeah,
even before he confirmed that Lostara Yil was dead. And and look at what he does. He shoots Kalam with the poisoned arrow.
yeah,
Like, if you just shoot him through the head. The Pearl that I knew, the Pearl that is one of my top 10 favorite characters in the series
yeah,
from Deadhouse Gates and House of Chains, would have shot Kalam through the head.
yeah, totally. No,
And that would have been the end of the story. And Pearl would have made a witty joke. Pearl would have made some really sarcastic, witty remark that I would have laughed at. And he would have, by the way, murdered, assassinated Malik, Rel, and Korbal Doom
immediately,
the next day. Pearl
yeah,
would have been the ultimate hero of Malazan fans all over the world. He was about to kill Malik, Rel, and people tend to forget that, because people go, "Oh, I will never forgive what he did to Kalam. Oh, Pearl's such a coward. Pearl, blah
yeah.
blah blah." He was going to kill Malik, Rel, and Korbal Dome the next day.
Well, that's
It's
what I
impossible.
reading the
Go on,
first time through. I thought that was gonna happen. Like, I'm like, oh my god, is this about to go down? I'm like, what are the other 4 books gonna be about after this? Because like this is about to be it, and I see where this is all going now.
Yeah, and even the way he kind of gets killed by Apsala in the end, where he can escape into a warren, but he has a whatever Otatal blade
Yeah,
with him, and therefore he can't. Once again, the Pearl that we were shown in House of Chains and Deadhouse Gates would not have made a mistake that a 5-year-old in that
right.
world wouldn't have made, right? Let's face it, if there was magic in the real world, Ishkar, and there was this one substance that negates it, right? And if you and I were seasoned assassins to the point where you are about to take over the CIA, for example, would you make such an amateur mistake? This is Pearl we're talking about.
I know, it's so bad, and that's like what made the relationship part of it so good too, is like he never like changed or anything and like came around. Like he kept going with his like whole, like you said, the banter and the whole like kept up the whole show for her the whole time, and she just eventually like buckles under the pressure of that and is like, yes, and like that, but it isn't because he like becomes a different person the whole time. Like he just was him the whole time right up until there, I felt like. So
yeah, I mean, he uses his nature to just break through her defenses bit by bit.
yeah, Yeah. One other thing, well, I have a meeting in 20 minutes, but I do want to bring up the two relationships that, or not two relationships, but let's talk about the IMAS relationships, because you mentioned both the tool Hitan, which I'm really interested to hear what you think about that relationship, because I think it's cool that they're both basically IMAS, right, with the whole Barghast reveal and all of that stuff, but like that's kind of like what a relation, or what an IMAS like couple, like a IMAS power couple looks like, really, right? Because he's a total badass, she's a total badass too. But then also there's the Onrak Kalava, which I think like that could be a whole hour-long thing in itself, just because so many like, you know, events spiderweb out from that and all that stuff. But what do you think about those two?
The Onrak Kilava one's interesting because I'd completely forgotten that the whirlwind Shaik.
Yeah.
Ishkar, do you know who Shaik is?
The Onrak's wife or whatever.
Exactly.
The original.
I had completely forgotten that for a long time. And it was much later on that I remembered that this entire reason we have the Raraku whirlwind is because Onrak cheated with Kilava. And he kind of comes out of the cave and he's covered in blood or whatever it is, right? And they kind of take this as a sign that Onrak kind of sort of was a naughty boy the previous night. And she kind of just turns into this avatar of vengeance or whatever, which I thought was very interesting, that he would give that up for Kilava.
Yeah.
And that even hundreds of thousands of years later, it would have been very easy for Kilava to have moved on, right? Because they're all undead and they've gone through the ritual, while Kilava's an immortal and whatever it is. She could have, but the fact that she ends up with him as well, 300,000 years later.
Dude, so good.
Yeah, so good. Hitan and Tool, the only thing that I wanted to kind of point out about that was that the husband-wife dynamic, we actually get to see a proper tribal society husband-wife dynamic. Right. And because if you think about it, whenever we look at many of these tribal societies, even though Erickson does a great job humanizing them with his anthropology background and all that, I can't think of another proper marriage husband-wife dynamic in that tribal society, the way that kind of we see with the Hitan and Tool, which I thought was very, very good, and all the more tragic because of what happens.
Ugh. I know.
Right.
It's so,
and Ishkar, before we wrap up, can I just mention the one romance that never happened, which I wanted to happen?
Yes.
Lostara Yil and Quick Ben. Like, what the fuck? In the Bonehunters, we find out that Quick Ben had encountered Lostara when she was just a kid. I mean, once again, we're going back into the sort of cradle robbing, jailbait, whatever it is vibe, right? But and then Cotillon even mentions that Quick Ben wants to marry her. Quick Ben wanted her to join the Bridge Burners, right? And even she's like, oh, Delart, she can still remember the long tapered fingers and the eyes and the whatever of Delart and all that.
Yeah.
And it goes nowhere. In fact, the two of them even interact with each other in Dust of Dreams and House of Chains, and they don't even acknowledge each other. Of course, you could say that they both look different, or she doesn't know that Quick Ben is a Daefon Delart, but let's face it, everybody there at that point already knows that Quick Ben's name, even Ruthan Good at this point, right? I mean, my sort of positive counterpart, even that idiot has figured out by then that Ruthan, that sort of Quick Ben is a Daefon Delart. So what exactly is going on there? Why did we not get to see more of it? Will we get to see more of it? Can we please see a Quick Ben romance? I mean, come on. Something has to work out for Quick Ben, please.
Totally. Well, do you think Samar Dev's going to show up in the witness stuff or no?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Because that's another like thing I'm really looking forward to. And if you think about it, like, well, people say like the smartest people in the world, and I know you said she in your video that she's like the smartest person in the world or something like that, but there's like, you know, everybody always says Quick Ben and Tahol and Krupp, but I think she gets a bad rap. But being with Karsa, we might actually get to see, because her smarts are like more applied, like micro smarts, right? Like she's applying them to very you know, specific situations in her life and whatever. She's not like out masterminding society, you know, geopolitics and stuff like that. But like being with Karsa, she might have a chance to like apply that towards shaping broader events, which would be pretty badass to see.
Yeah, she's much more of a scholar than a strategist or a tactician.
Totally.
While the others would be more along the manipulative, get what they want, work problem. She's not a problem solver the way that Quick Ben and Tehol and stuff are sort of strategists and problem solvers. She's just an academic who's a master at a multitude of disciplines.
Totally. But she would be like a good advisor, right? So if Karsa gets into a position where people are like worshiping him, or he's like ruling people and stuff like that, like she would be that person you'd want standing right next to the throne, or having her own throne right next door, like going, yeah, but what about, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And so that would be pretty dope.
She would also be useful to have when things go bad and you need a smart person who knows a lot at your side.
Yeah, this is very true. Dude, I feel like we could have kept going for a long time as usual. Yeah. I have to now get out of fun mode and go put on a tie and pretend to be in make money mode. But I really enjoyed this. I hope everyone else did too. This is like such a dope idea for a Valentine's Day video. And I was saying we should have a lot more themed stuff like this, like for Friends Day, and just like, I don't know, we'll find a bunch of ones because there's so much stuff to celebrate. The friendships, more badass moments. I think there's a million more that we could do there. So we're going to put you on the record. You're coming back?
Absolutely. Father's Day, Mother's Day.
Father's Day would be dope.
Yeah, I mean, Osirk, Draconis, Rake. I mean, come on, man. Totally. I can go. Father's Day, Ruthan Bad will be spitting fire. Trust me.
Yes, that will be dope. So, well, hey, thank you again for coming on. Everybody else, thank you for watching. Make sure you go subscribe. I'll put the link to Ruthan Bad's channel, although I'm sure you already know it. Go show some love, subscribe, watch those videos, give it the like so that we bring more Meslas in. And yeah, until next time, happy reading.